of speakers. So our first person who is going to speak is Rebecca Champagne, who's a PhD student in ecology and environmental sciences. And she's going to help us learn about improving weed management for organic vegetable farmers. So if you can give her a hand.
All right, thank you, Linda. And thank you everybody for coming today. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about why weeds are the biggest production problem for organic farmers and some research that we've been doing to help them with their management. So organic agriculture is really important for the state of Maine. We have a lot of young and beginning farmers. We have about 500 organic farms that are residing on 55,000 acres and counting. Maine also ranks 10th in the nation for organic crop sales, and this is estimated at about $65 million a year. So helping Maine's organic farmers tackle their problems with weeds is a really important goal to help them boost their production to meet rising consumer demand. So why are weeds a huge problem? So they compete with the crop for resources such as nutrients, light, water, and because of this, they can reduce crop yield quite a bit. They also can cause harvest issues, and they are also time-consuming and labor-intensive to manage, and not to mention expensive. So physical weed control is what organic farmers primarily rely on. This is either through tractors or through hand tools, and this is because conventional herbicides are not permitted in organic production. However, the effectiveness of these tools can be low and quite variable, and a lack of weed control with these physical tools can result in abundant seed production by these weeds. So this diagram will illustrate to you what happens when a weed escapes control and is free to grow in the field. So it starts off as this seedling, and it gets bigger, and then it eventually reproduces seed. So these seeds are deposited on the soil or incorporated into the soil. Some of them are eaten by seed predators, and some will decay in the soil, but the majority of these seeds are going to reside in the soil profile, and this is what we refer to as the weed seed bank. So when a farmer will till their soil in preparation for the next season, all of these seeds will be brought up near the soil surface, and this helps them germinate. So this often results in an increasing weed problem. So most farmers rely on physical weed control with tractors, and this is often done with single tools. An important goal of weed management for organic farmers is to improve the efficacy of these tools, meaning the ability of these tools to kill the weeds but not kill the crop. So like I said, most farmers are going to be using one tool at a time, but recent work by Brown and Gallen found that if you stack tools, so use more than one at a time, you can actually increase your weed control efficacy, and it actually results in a synergistic effect, meaning that the interactive effect of using tools together is greater than the effect of just using one tool by itself. But oftentimes a small-scale farmer may not be able to use a larger implement like this because they're quite expensive to purchase and they may not be feasible for the scale of the operation. So some work that we've been doing to help the small-scale farmers is looking at hand tools. So this is a smaller tool that we push by hand that a farmer can use on a smaller scale in their vegetable fields. So we've been collaborating with Johnny Selected Seeds and working with this tool called the TerraTech Double Wheel Hoe. TerraTech is a company based out of France, and they sell some of their products through Johnny's. So one trial that we've been doing is looking at the resulting weed control if we run the TerraTech with a single tool through some vegetables and weeds, and then also what would happen if we stacked a second or a third tool onto this. So similar as what you could do with a tractor-drawn implement, but this time on a much smaller scale that a small-scale farmer could use. So this graph shows tool number on the x-axis. So this would be the number of tools used all at once on this TerraTech tool. And then this is the percent weed control on the y-axis. And what's promising about this work is that we've found it's following the same trend as if you were stacking tools on a tractor. So when you add a second or a third tool onto this TerraTech implement, you're getting increased weed control compared to just using one tool. So this could help a farmer kill more weeds in a single pass, which will reduce the competition with the crop and also reduce the amount of hand weeding labor that would be required later in the season, which is oftentimes what's done on these farms, and it can be quite expensive. So it's our hope that we can share these results with farmers and have some farmer collaboration through Johnny's Seeds and help some small-scale organic vegetable growers in the state kill more weeds, boost their production, and meet that rising demand that we're seeing across the state. So I just want to acknowledge the USDA, National Institute of Food and Ag, the Organic Agriculture Research and Extension Initiative for the funding of this work, the Umaine Weed Ecology Lab, and also the Mitchell Center for inviting me to speak today.
Wonderful. And you did it on time, too, with all those great ideas. Our next speaker is talking about linking hydrodynamics to pollution management in Maine estuaries, and it's Sohaib, Alahmed, graduate student in civil and environmental engineering.
I really want to start by showing you this simulation, which is the tide in Frenchman Bay near Bar Harbor, predicted by our numerical model. I should stay here. We're using this model to study the kinematic and dynamic of the flow in such complex system. So basically, how the flow behave and why it behave the way it does. Now, what does this knowledge has to do with linking it to the pollution and management in Maine estuaries, you may ask? Before I answer that question, I would give you some background about this region. So this map shows you all the fishing activities in Frenchman Bay. It's hard to see the labels, but we have a lot of mussel and oyster farms, huge monoflats for clams, and also for eelgrass. Any fishing activities is regulated by the DMR, or Maine Department of Marine Resources. Due to the pollution issue, a lot of areas are susceptible to closure. Most of them are susceptible to temporary closure, which is the blue highlighted area, but others are susceptible to permanent closure, which is the red highlighted area. That's a problem if you want to sort of expand your work. And actually, the current number of the farm in Maine are not sufficient to meet the future demand or the future market demand. That's why there's a huge motivation to sort of expand this business. So in order to sort of address the pollution problem, we can decompose it into three components or three elements as suggested by Dr. Sean Smith. So first is delivery. So how the pollution manage its way to the estuary? You may fix that problem, but in most cases, we have limited sort of control over the delivery sort of element. So how about source? So what we mean by source is what and who causes the pollution. It could be human, which is an easy problem to fix, or it could be animal, which is sometimes tricky and hard to deal with. So maybe we have sort of limited control over delivery and limited control over sources. And if we have that situation, we probably expect to see sort of high polluted area or high pollution in our estuary. At this point, we need to look at the third element, which is residence time. And we can define residence time is the time required for a specific element or a specific water parcel found anywhere in the estuary to leave the estuary. And sort of to push the boundary of the model application and implication, I can add estuary and hydrodynamic, which include residence time. So what we're trying to do now is to answer the following question. How long will it take for a particle to leave the estuary? Where does it go and why? And to answer that question, we are going to use that numerical model that you saw in a few slides. In order to make sure that the model predicts the reality, we have validated the model against the measurement. Here you're seeing that we have 3 stations over which we measure the water depth that you can see here. Station 1, 2, and 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to compare the model outcome with this measurement to make sure that the model is producing the physical or the real world. Okay, so this is the model prediction. This is the tide. And the tide is not going that fast, by the way, but it's just so the model has kind of predicted the reality pretty well, or as much as we want. And what we're going to do, this is actually a longer time series. I should have talked about like the models validated for a very long time. So to make sure that we're producing the reality. So what we're going to do, we're going to use this model to predict the residence time. And the way we do it is we're going to sort of track a Lagrangian particle. What we did is we divided the domain into multiple subdomains, as you can see here. At each subdomain, we filled each subdomain is being filled with multiple Lagrangian particles. Each particle was tagged, so it's easier for us to sort of track it. The particles are passive, which means they don't affect the hydrodynamic, and conservative, they don't die out. Let's look at some results. I will show you the sort of the particles in 3 different systems, Union, Jordan, and Skilling, for us to be able to compare sort of different behavior of different systems. So let's see that. The particle goes in and out because of the tide, right? As you can see, the Union River or Union Estuary sort of struggle to flush the particle out. And sort of to look at the problem differently, this figure shows you the time required to flush a specific amount of volume, right? The Jordan River, actually, there's only 20% left in the Jordan River after 4 days, while Union River is so really struggling, and even after 30 days, it's like 60 or more than 60% left of it. So that's a huge residence time, which means that Union River is sort of vulnerable to sort of pollution. And let's look at different sort of results. This is residence time as a function of space. Red color means like sort of higher residence time, blue means like less residence time. As you can see, like this estuary really has high residence time, which means it's really vulnerable to pollution, and it's susceptible to closure. While the estuary next to it also suffers from residence time, but probably doesn't have a pollution problem. That's why I'm almost done. That's why there is no sort of closure in this estuary. So we can push the, I'm done, almost done. So we can push the model even beyond the residence time. And I want to finish it up with this quote by Fiona. The model helped us asking questions that we are not even there to ask. I want to acknowledge Neil for being a good boat driver. This is him. He was good. He was good. Yeah, thank you so much.
our next presentation will be on a decision support tool for hydropower dams in Maine's Penobscot River, and it's Emma Fox, PhD student in ecology and environmental sciences.
All right. I have my own timer here. Thank you. So my name is Emma Fox. I'm a doctoral candidate in the Ecology and Environmental Science program, and I get to work with this really great team of people, Sharon Klein, Sam Roy, and William Winslow over at the University of New Hampshire. And together we're trying to build a decision support tool that is useful, relevant, and user-friendly for both individuals and groups who are making decisions about single and multiple dams. Excuse me. So the motivation behind this work is that hydropower dam decisions are complex. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission issues a hydropower operational license for a period of 30 to 50 years. This means that when relicensing comes up, it's a really important opportunity to look at the infrastructure in the river and think about the impacts that it's having. It's also a key opportunity for stakeholders to be able to voice their opinions to the FERC and have those voices heard in a formal way as a part of the process. The challenge here is that it's tough to be an intervener in the FERC relicensing process because the barriers to participation are really high. This means you need a substantial amount of information as well as time in some cases to be able to participate in a way that's meaningful for FERC. The way that we're trying to lower those barriers for people is through something called multi-criteria decision analysis, or MCDA. It's a quantitative model, or quantitative type of model that helps the user think about decision alternatives over a set of criteria that they can compare and contrast across, similar to benefit cost analysis, but without the monetization. So we don't need to put a dollar value on everything, which is nice. MCDA has 5 steps. First, we identify the decision criteria and alternatives. Decision alternatives are the different possible options for a dam. So these are things like removing the dam or adding hydropower generation capacity to a dam. The decision criteria are the different factors or attributes that you might be considering to be able to compare decision alternatives. These are things like annuitized project costs or greenhouse gas emission reductions. We collected data on decision alternatives and criteria. I should say too, first we identified the criteria and alternatives using a set of stakeholder interviews. We coded 28 interviews with decision makers who are involved in dam decision making across the state of Maine. So after we had the data, we normalized them to help make them comparable. So we're talking about apples and apples and not apples and oranges. We normalized using the minimum value and the maximum value to sort of bound the data to a single criterion, which makes it easier to talk across those units that might be conflicting otherwise. We elicit preferences from stakeholders about their decision criteria, or if you were using the tool, we would ask about your preferences. And then we combine the data and preference information to produce a score, which we can then rank. The score just is a helpful recommendation for the user. It's not making the decision for you. You still have to use your best judgment, right? But it is a helpful way to think about possibilities for a future of the dam. And it will be different, the outcome will be different for every user because everyone's preferences are different. This is an example of our user interface. So we have some background information about the tool as well as a set of instructions which kind of take you step by step through in a tutorial. I'm so proud of this. I hope it seems as pretty as I think it is. We also include some background information about the FERC integrated licensing process and about the Penobscot River watershed. We focus the tool around the set of dams just upstream of us that are coming up for relicensing in the next 10 years. So this problem is very close to home, right? You can hover over each dam location and learn a little bit more about that particular site. We have information on power capacity and average annual electricity generation. we also, so then you can input your preference information as the user, right? We ask users to slide the bars to indicate their relative preference for each criterion in the model, and we ask them to do this for every one of the 8 dams that are on the map. So this helps us collect information on their preferences, and they're limited to a set of 100 preference points. So the idea is to kind of force the issue of trade-offs, to think intentionally about how you're allocating those preference points. The tool also includes a set of fact sheets for every dam, a data set for every dam. Our research indicates that dam decision making is very site-specific, so we made the tool site-specific too. This is an example of the results. We have some interpretive text as well as the graphed result. This was achieved using equal preferences, so I made this up. It's not real. But I divided the 100 preference points evenly amongst the criteria. So the recommendation here is that you would look at removing most of the dams except for East Millinocket, Dolby, and North Twin, where it's recommending to improve fish passage or improve hydro generation and fish passage. You can also download the graph if you are generating a result or a report for your group. Maybe you're interested in intervening in the FERC process. These red arrows are just to indicate that where those rankings are pretty close, we want to be careful about how we're interpreting those results. It's the first best, second best, third best, but maybe where they're even, it gets a little fuzzy. So it also, you can drill down to the individual level, compare the decision alternatives for a single dam, in this case, a West Enfield Dam. And we can also separate the results by how the criteria contribute to each individual alternative for the whole set of dams. Oops. So stakeholder input and user feedback really shaped this tool. We tested it in a series of workshops over the last 2 years, and the tool has potential for supporting early conversations about dam relicensing. So we're excited about it. Thank you.
Now we're going to hear about food waste. The next talk is a sustainable approach to food waste management, a triple bottom line for food-based businesses in Maine and beyond. And our undergraduate student presenters are Peter O'Brien from Economics, Stephanie Ayotte from Civil and Environmental Engineering, and Katie Timms from Biology and Ecology.
I'm Katie Timms.
I'm Stephanie Ayotte.
And I'm Peter O'Brien. Hi guys, so you just got the introductions, but we're working with Suzanne Lee over in the Maine Business School to study and potentially address food loss in the state of Maine. So, why food waste? Why is this a big issue? Well, nearly 40% of all food produced globally is wasted, i.e. it's never eaten. And Maine is no exception. And a study by the School of Economics done in 2011 found that food waste makes up 28% of all the waste stream for households. So clearly a big issue that's close to home for all of us. And our ongoing project is focused around stakeholder engagement. So we believe that any effective solution will get buy-in from both governments, institutions, as well as, of course, businesses to be effective. And the sort of framework we use to engage and entice stakeholders to work and participate with us is what is known as the triple bottom line. So like the traditional accounting bottom line, it incorporates profit, but also planet and people as well, two very important components. So first off, we have profits. It's estimated that $218 billion is spent annually on food that is never eaten in the U.S., which that alone suggests that there is significant potential for cost savings in the food industry. And research backs this up as well. A study done of 1,200 business sites spread across 17 different countries found that the average savings of businesses that invested in food waste reduction were $14 in savings for every $1 invested. 99% of these businesses earned a positive return on investment. And the next component of the triple bottom line is planet. Technical difficulties. There we go. So next up is planet, and when food decomposes in a landfill, it produces methane, which is a greenhouse gas which is 72 times more potent than carbon dioxide in terms of warming effects. And as well as that, the Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that global food production needs to increase by almost 70% by 2050 in order to keep up with growing demand. So this alone suggests that we should really be valuing and preserving the food which we already produce, as that is quite the monumental task. And last but not least on the triple bottom line is people. And when I'm talking about people, we're talking specifically about food insecurity. So food insecurity refers to individuals who are not sure where and when their next meal might come from, and it actually affects 25% of children and 15% of seniors in Maine. This makes us the worst state in terms of food insecurity in New England. And studies have suggested that if we could just reduce 15% of annual food loss on a nationwide scale, we'd be able to feed an additional 25 million Americans.
So the three of us came together as a interdisciplinary team, and we started our semester by researching food waste, both globally and in the context of Maine. And in doing so, we compiled a list of the major role players in the Maine food industry and created a Maine Food Production Leadership Council. A lot of our discussions were focused on identifying their needs and barriers they saw with regards to sustainable food production and distribution. And we kind of focused it off of the Maine food recovery hierarchy, which prioritizes reducing unwanted food at the source and feeding hungry people, followed by feeding animals, and with a last resort of composting food waste and or converting food waste to fuel. By mid-October, we found that we had enough support to invite these groups to a working session with the goal of collecting their feedback with regards to the problem. And so we had a huge success in the attendance of our working session with representatives of or a wide variety of groups with regards to like retail, manufacturing, processing, agricultural production, and industry, with hospitals, schools, and restaurants. And we were also lucky enough to be supported by Congresswoman Shelley Pingree, who really emphasized the priority of this issue in the state of Maine and the reach that this potential project could have.
All right, so from our working session, we found about 6 major barriers that are preventing Maine businesses from achieving a reduction in food waste in the state of Maine. So during our working session, we asked 3 main questions. The first being, what drives food loss in the state of Maine? Then what current options do businesses have to reduce food loss and waste? And then what challenges do they have for achieving the Maine food waste hierarchy? So the first barrier is time. With a biodegradable product such as food, time is of the essence, and the ability to transport food quickly is a top priority. The second is transportation. Limited transportation due to a lack of resources is hard for businesses to want to spare an extra vehicle to transport food, which is heavy and costly. These resources for businesses could be used elsewhere to earn more of a profit rather than by donating the food. And therefore the food is more likely to be landfilled. The third is a lack of storage. So food banks and gleaners who collect food are limited by the amount of refrigeration and storage they have. Composters additionally have limited storage as they have to process the food in certain proportions. A lack of traceability and transparency between businesses additionally causes further issues. A lack of shared information between businesses presents a barrier when trying to connect businesses with gleaners and food banks. With the issue of time, businesses often choose to landfill the food rather than to donate it. A lack of education for customer-based businesses additionally presents an issue. A lack of consumer education as to how to compost food often leads to contaminated compost as well as unnecessary food waste. And then finally, there are legal barriers that limit the amount of food that is donated. Maine legal barriers present confusion regarding both food safety and business liability, thus preventing people from donating. So going forward, our goal is to provide solutions for a win-win case for both businesses in the state of Maine, as well as increased sustainability. We're going to be focusing on solutions that meet the question of scalability, as well as the cost ratios. We're also going to be considering geographical limitations of Maine, as well as the population sprawl. We're planning to meet in spring of 2020 to present our solutions to a stakeholder council again to further get more feedback as to our solutions. And then we're going to conclude in April 2020 with the defined final solutions as well as next steps for the Mitchell Center. We'd like to thank the Mitchell Center for this project as well as Susan. Thank you.
Aren't these all great? So interesting. So our next is Undergraduate Interdisciplinary Teams, Challenges and Solutions, and Tony Sutton, PhD candidate in Ecology and Environmental Sciences.
All right, thanks for the introduction. It's been an honor to work with this undergraduate research team. We've got people from this campus as well as hopefully Natalie joining us from USM. But just to introduce everybody, we have Hannah and Jordan presenting today from the nursing program, Kendall, who's in civil and environmental engineering, and Natalie, as I already introduced. Are you there, Natalie?
Yeah.
Perfect. Business and economics major. So, what I think is really fascinating about our approach to food waste is that each one of these students on this has their own separate project and way that they're addressing food waste. So what we do as a group is we look for conversations that are existing across projects, such as thinking about wicked problems and multiple stakeholders. We're able to see that through each individual student project. Like just looking at this picture, this was taken from one of our nursing students working in hospitals, and looking at the multiple impacts food waste has in this one setting really just adds a lot of richness to the conversations that we have as a group. So what we're going to present on today is just some of the findings that our researchers have, and then some of about our process as a research team. So I'll give this to Kendall to keep the party going.
So one complication of siloed research is that from very early on, each field is taught a very specific definition of what counts as an answer to a problem. And they're usually stuck inside of these bounds. But in interdisciplinary research, we get to kind of use that to our advantage, because each unique perspective gets a new spin or gives us a more well-rounded understanding of the problem. And this holds especially true for our team as we tackled the wicked problem that is food waste. For example, I studied anaerobic digestion in a lab and a literary setting, and by understanding the chemical factors that both inhibited and optimized this process, we can make it a more appealing and stable process for food recovery for facilities to use.
So what I worked on is that we went into several long-term care facilities to see how and why they have so much waste and like how it's produced. This image here is a picture of one of the food trays of snacks that one of the facilities used. They had a policy where they had to provide a snack that for the residents, even though the residents didn't necessarily want the snack or weren't hungry for it. So this was a pretty large source of food waste. We also found that out of all the facilities we interviewed, only one facility composted.
My project looked at business food waste and current donation practices. I went around and surveyed businesses from all across the state of Maine, and then I made my final project as a website where they can go on and then look at barriers to food waste that they identified, and then potential ways to overcome them. I'm ready. Some of the challenges with our group were, as we mentioned before, siloed research. Because we work so within our own discipline, like our own majors and our own things, we rarely get to take classes outside of that, and it's hard to connect our research back to other subjects like naturally. And then the other really unique challenge with our interdisciplinary group was like our scheduling. So we all have different majors, and we're often in classes at varying times. Nurses typically start their days at like 6 a.m. with labs, where the engineering students typically end their afternoons with labs. And then I'm currently studying at the University of Minnesota, so like I'm in a different time zone, and that's definitely been a challenge as well.
Okay, so bringing it back to interdisciplinary teams and how we really take all of our different projects and create something that we can all put out there together. So thinking about that, we thought of solutions, and there's things such as good communication, good meeting times, but it really came back to commitment. Having a team that is always going to be there, always meeting up and pulling their weight, I guess, in a sense. So we thought trying to come up with solutions to create a really cohesive, integrative team. So we found that using ways of compensation, so maybe payment, which teams do now, getting paid for your time, so that way all students are really involved and they're given back something for all this hard work that they're doing for the university or whatever organization. Utilizing technology, so making sure you're using programs such as Skype or Zoom with your team so that everyone can meet no matter, just like Natalie, like this, so that she can still present here today and talk about her research. And then we were also looking into the idea of making it a class credit. So undergraduates have very little time built into their schedules for research. It's for core classes and foundational learning. So by creating it as a class, maybe someone who's not interested in history can still get a credits or like a gen ed for that, but their gen ed would be doing research. It would be learning about research techniques, writing papers, instead of maybe doing a history class, which they're not interested in, and it builds time into their schedule to create the data. Yeah. So that's what we're hoping to do, is to make an undergraduate class someday so that more people can be take part.
That's it. Yeah. Last slide is just our acknowledgements.
So.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Debbie, and thank you for our funders for making this possible. Yeah.
And next, we will have a talk on investigating the environmental impacts of abscisic acid levels in soybean drought by Abigayl Novak, who's an undergraduate student in ecology and environmental sciences.
Hello, thank you for coming. So I'm going to be talking about my current research that I'm doing that involves soybean drought. So a little background before I get started. Plants provide us with things like oxygen so that we can breathe. They provide us with food. We at least eat a couple vegetables, greenery in our diets every day. And they make up our environment. We use them as housing materials. We use them as landscaping for our yards, as well as keeping us protected from things like wind. And it's also important to look at plants in their natural native environments because it can tell us a lot about their physiological processes, which leads to us in increasing our advancements in agriculture. Farmers are always looking to increase their yields as well as decrease the amount of pests and pathogens. And some of the ways that they do this are crop breeding as well as genetic modification, although these topics are really controversial. And also, if we learn about one kind of plant that's similar to another one, we can take that knowledge to that plant with a different kind of base of people. And with our increased effects of climate change we're seeing, we're going to probably see increased extreme weather conditions, which means more frequent droughts. And by learning about how these plants interact with these conditions, it will be important for our livelihoods. So drought in plant physiology is defined as water deficiencies inhibiting plants to achieve their genetic potential. There are generally two components when we talk about drought: VPD, which is vapor pressure deficiency, and the other one, which has to do with atmospheric conditions, how wet is the atmosphere, and then the other one is soil moisture, how wet or dry is the parent material, and we use an instrument to measure this. During drought, abscisic acid, or ABA, is one of the main hormones that are used, and incorporating plant hormones into my research can highlight the importance of communication among and between plants. And hormones can also improve or inhibit growth and development. Some plants rely on signaling or production of its defenses to them. It helps them defend themselves since they can't really move. And by studying these hormones, we're able to see the chemical compounds that interact with these and hopefully understand the environment. So what actually happens in drought, as you can see, this graph is kind of blurry, but I really like it, how it illustrates what happens. The plant detects the environmental stress, and then the plant signals to start producing ABA, either in the roots or the leaves. We're still not sure where it is. Scientists believe that it could be in either, but if it is in the leaves, then it would be a shorter pathway for the hormone to transport. And then it moves throughout this body, the plant body, so that it closes the stomata, which reduces the amount of water that is lost. It also reduces the amount of CO2 gas exchange, which is kind of a downside due to those stomata closing, although it does preserve the water content. And in general, this process is a little inefficient because the ABA in some plants have to travel up really far. So why soybeans? Soybeans are fast-growing crops that can be easily observed, and it kind of went into my timeline and my goals of this research. And they're also economically important. We use them as oilseed crops, and they provide us with a lot of nutrients. Being a legume, they're able to do their own nitrogen fixation, which reduces the amount of fertilizers that we have to use. And in 2016, the U.S. alone produced 4.31 billion bushels. 1 bushel is equal to 60 pounds, so that's around 200 billion pounds of soybeans. And for my project, we are using 2 varieties of soybeans. The first one is PI 41693, or PI, and this is our drought-tolerant one. PI has a fibrous root system, which allows it to combat drought conditions by being able to reach the water that they wouldn't otherwise be able to have. And our other variety is Hutchinson, or HU, and that's our drought-intolerant species, or variety. So my objectives for this project are, how do the ABA levels change during the drought experiment? And I'll be looking at every single step throughout the drought experiment for that objective. And my second one is what happens to ABA levels after the recovery of drought when we rehydrate the plants. So specifically, I'll be looking right after the drought experiment, as well as like when we start rewatering the plants, what will change. And this is just a list of my current methods that I'm using, but the most important are stomatal conductance and ABA levels, so that I'll be able to extract leaf material and later be able to quantify the levels of ABA. And this is just a picture of the equipment that I've been using to do the other measurements. So understanding the physiological mechanisms that plants use in drought conditions are essential for us to adapt to, since we may be experiencing more frequent drought conditions. This research project takes basic knowledge of plant physiology, ecological-based concepts, and chemical and molecular parts together. And I've also been taught that collaborative and interdisciplinary research is an invaluable part of learning because of all the different perspectives that you get. There's so much potential for this research to be incorporated into improving Maine's knowledge of plants in drought conditions, especially in our blueberry farms, potato fields, and forest industries. And those are just my